An emanator status is something that is a bit vague to establish, a discussion that would divide us lore enthusiasts, each one ending with, as long as it is not explicitly stated in the lore, then character X is not an emanator, which is a valid conclusion to arrive at. Herda was explicitly stated to be an emanator, so was Ekron, Xandar, and Dr. Primitive. So when Trailblazer got the opportunity to ask Lygus why he was doing what he was doing in Amphorius, attempting to destroy Nous the Erudition despite him being an emanator of erudition, that caught my attention. Reason being, prior to that, the most that Trailblazer knew of Lygus' real identity was that he might be a member of the Genius Society. Herda, who gave this intel, mentioned 4 candidates of the society whom Lygus could be without ever mentioning that any of them was an emanator. That was what led me down this rabbit hole. Just like Nanook, who personally extends the invitation to someone or something to join the Lord Ravagers, thus becoming an emanator of destruction, I believe Nous personally inviting the most brilliant minds in the cosmos to join the Genius Society is the equivalent to that. Members of the Genius Society are emanators of erudition. And I know what you're thinking. If they are emanators, then why haven't the writers said so by now? Well, I don't know. But one thing I know for sure is that prior to the Banana Brain Rot quest, every mention of Dr. Primitive in the game has always been simply number 64 Dr. Primitive, which include the in-game lore and articles released in HoYoLab. It was only after that quest that we knew he was an emanator. So using that same logic, if someone came up to you claiming that Dr. Primitive was an emanator of erudition prior to that quest, and you ask that question, the answer would be, maybe they just have not had the opportunity. And maybe the writers don't even need to, because every new lore related to this group of people seems to point towards the fact that geniuses equal erudition emanators. This video is sponsored by me. That's right, I've recently launched channel membership on this channel, so if you want to give extra support for me to do what I do, consider joining the membership by clicking the join button or the link downstairs. Now, by definition, emanators are individuals whose power is granted directly by the Aeons, which makes them incomparably more powerful than mere mortals. In most cases, they are enforcers of Aeons' wills. On the other hand, Genius Society are a group of individuals who caught Nous' attention after a feat of genius that they accomplished. And it was not merely catching Nous' attention and earning their gaze, because then Nous themselves would send a signal to these individuals, inviting them to join in the search for answers to the universe. Adding complexity to that, some of these geniuses would assume that the signal was simply them earning Nous' favor and approval. Some would think that they had reached greatness and created priceless inventions, that their life works and achievement deserved Nous' approval, hoping that Nous would respond to them. What it was Nous giving them a chance to ask questions and seek guidance from them. Only those who could understand this could become true members of the Genius Society. So it was less about a simple gaze on mortals and an invitation to the Genius Society, and more about Nous wanting to test these individuals of their capability to ask questions. Nous handpicks them, well, figuratively. Nous is a droid head after all, they technically don't have hands. Nous handpicks them just as Nanook handpicks the Lord Ravagers, and they do this because they want these people to join in the pursuit of finding answers to the universe. There's an answer to everything. Originally, before their ascension to Aeonhood, Nous was built by Xandar as a supercomputer to provide answers to the universe. This becomes the one thing that Nous continues to extrapolate after their ascension. It is their goal, their will, so to speak, to find the answers to the universe. By inviting these geniuses to join them in this pursuit, the geniuses are enforcing Nous' will. Sure, it is not as destructive as the Lord Ravagers' enforcement of Nanook's will, but it is because Nous is an Aeon that calculates and seeks answers, rather than one who destroys because they think creation is a mistake. Nous asks questions about the universe, and the Genius Society are the extension of their will in this regard. As Herda said, the Genius Society were favored by Nous. Or as mentioned in the Unknowable Domain, they are thought synapses that the erudition extends into reality, the physical manifestation and phenomenon of Aeonic thought. So if emanators are enforcers of Aeons' wills, seeing as this is the role that the Genius Society serve for Nous, doesn't this make them equal to emanators? One good example of this is Poka Kakamond. For every moment that Nous has calculated, she will be there to see it done. The death of the Emperor Ruberts, you can count on her to be there, making sure everyone stays confined in Nous' circle of knowledge, Polka is ready to throw her scalpel at anyone who tries to break free. And so far, no in-game text has separated the role of emanators of erudition and the members of the Genius Society. In fact, the more we dig into the quests and the readables, the more similar they are to each other. Take the Crown of the Mundane and Divine quest, for example. In the first half of that quest, we saw records of Ruanmei's research into emanators. In her attempt to understand what emanators were, she created a genius. This ultimately failed because what she did was reviving number 8 Lambda, and Lambda just refused to stay alive. Then Ruanmei said this.
However, erudition isn't the only path in the universe. If we set logic aside, would there be more primitive and pure emanators on other paths?
Which then led her to propagation, and the whole emanator of propagation shenanigan that Trailblazer had to take care of. But the point I'm trying to make is this. When Ruanmei attempted to study emanators, her first step was to look at the path of erudition, the path she's more familiar with, and then she tried to bring back a genius. To understand the emanators of erudition, Ruanmei tried to study a genius. But then, why couldn't she just study herself, you might wonder? Because what Ruanmei wished to capture was the point at which an individual became closer to the eons as they were becoming an emanator. Assuming that the Genius Society are emanators, then at that point of her research, Ruanmei was already an emanator. She could not observe the moment of herself becoming closer to the erudition because she already was. Reviving a genius, on the other hand, perhaps could yield a different result. Then there was the moment at which Herda became a member of the Genius Society. Long story short, Herda became a member after she solved a formula that had stumped the cosmos for thousands of years. The event was recorded in the unknowable domain as such. Many years later, Pativia the scholar becomes Dr. Pativia. The formula she leaves behind becomes the famous solitary waves theory. This conundrum confounded the cosmos for almost 100 Ember eras until the day that a young lady named Herda solved it, elevating herself to the rank of geniuses. Herda solving the formula made her a genius, full stop. There are no other instances afterwards that specifically talked about her becoming an emanator. In fact, the word used to describe her becoming a member of the society is elevate. She elevated herself to the rank of geniuses. She became more than just a past rider of erudition, she became a genius. There's also the fact that researchers at Herda space station see Herda on unequal ground to Ruanmei and Scrollum. This readable compares the achievements between the geniuses. Are some geniuses better than others? The manuscript reflected. The writer tried to compare the achievements of Herda, Ruanmei, and Scrollum and found out that they could hardly decide which one of them was the best. Instead of separating Herda from the two, because the comparison wouldn't be apple to apple, for Herda was an emanator while the other two were not, the writer simply compared them equally. Or when fans of the Genius Society argue over the geniuses, Herda is simply grouped together with the other geniuses. No separation whatsoever, no mention of her status as an emanator. Still not convinced? How about this one then? As I've mentioned in the beginning, before Lygus' identity was revealed to be Xandar 1 Kuwabara, member number 1 of the Genius Society, the creator of news as well as an emanator of erudition, what Trailblazer knew of his identity was that he might be a member of the Genius Society. After eliminating possibilities one by one, Herda and Scrollum were left with 4 candidates: Polka Kakemond, Acha, Robert I, and Robert II. Never once did Herda said that these members were emanators of erudition. They were simply members of the Genius Society. And this is what we know too, right? No mention of Polka, Acha, or either Roberts being emanators of erudition. But then, upon learning of Lygus' goal to destroy Nous the erudition, Trailblazer asked him this. Aren't you an emanator of erudition? Baffled that Lygus would try to destroy the eon that he is an emanator of. So, unless all members of the Genius Society are emanators of erudition, I don't know where Trailblazer got that information. And speaking of Lygus, his reflection on Amphoresis Scepter's extrapolation might give us some clues as to why Nous invited these geniuses in the first place. See, Lygus' motivation to destroy Nous is to free humanity from the confinement of the known universe. After Nous' ascension, there are no new discoveries because everything has been answered by Nous, and they confine the cosmos within the boundary of that known universe, also known as the Circle of Knowledge. Polka Kakemond, the infamous killer of the Genius Society, is their right-hand man to ensure that everyone stays confined. Anybody who tries to break free from the circle would be eliminated. Number 7 Bohdan, Robert I, and Robert II were some of her victims. What Lygus wants is for humanity to be free to learn, explore, and discover new knowledge like they used to be before erudition was a thing. But Nus's existence is in the way of him and his desire for knowledge. Not only that, Lygus also believes that since Nus's ascension, every genius has become a prisoner to the erudition. Take Robert II, for example. He inherited memories of Robert I, then continued where it left off, perfecting the anti-organic equation and starting the Second Mechanical Emperor's War. He created the Scepter system, a cosmic-level supercomputer, to help him think beyond the limitation of his human brain. Yet all of that, everything that Robert II did, was simply him carrying Nus's thoughts. Lygus believes that Nus nudged both Roberts to start the Mechanical Emperor's Wars so that the universe would go down the path that they have calculated. Should these wars never break out, for example, major events in the cosmos could have ended differently. Yet those wars did happen because Nus invited both Ruperts to the society, making them an extension of their will, puppets of the erudition. Nus did all of that to find the optimal solution for the war among the eons. And this conclusion that Lygus arrived at might have some truth to it. Case in point, Ruanmei's involvement in the Xianzou's fight against the Abundance. Consider this. From the finest duel under the pristine blue quest, we learned that the coffin Locha carried around contained a fragment of Tazronth, the propagation. Then in Fables About the Stars Part 2, we saw Jingliu suggesting that they could use this fragment, bathed in the destruction's golden blood, to kill Yaoshe, the Abundance. Aside from how Jingliu came to the revelation about Nanook's golden blood, the other question that I have here is, where did Locha get that fragment? This doesn't take a genius to answer, but the answer is a genius. He got it from Ruanmei. I've talked about it at length in these videos if you want some refresher. Ruanmei and Locha have been working together. For bringing the propagation fragment into the Xianzou, Ruanmei would help Locha save Tingyun. What part Tingyun would play in all of this is another question, but the point is, the fragment that could potentially end Yaoshe the Abundance was something that Locha acquired from Ruanmei. And I'm sure this is the case because remember Ruanmei's Emanator experiment? She ended up fixating on the propagation. I wouldn't be surprised if she somehow got her hands on a fragment of them. I mean, she already had a simulated version of it when synthesizing that propagation emanator. Now, if we trace back from there, how did Ruanmei end up fixating on the propagation? She wanted to understand emanators, the one life forms that she was yet to comprehend. Going back further, Ruanmei's fixation on life, the fundamental nature of it, was because this was the main focus of her study. And guess what? This became the main focus of her study after she was gazed by Nus. As her character story described the event, no one knew what she asked Nus. But after that incident, she became even more immersed in her study. She would only study the fundamental nature of life. So Nus gazed at Ruanmei, invited her to the Genius Society, and made her fixated on the study of life sciences that eventually she would be fixating on the propagation, obtain a fragment of Tazronth, give it to Locha, which in turn gave the Xianzou an opportunity to kill an eon. Nus calculated as such that the gaze casted Ruanmei's way ensured the death of an eon, part of their optimal solution for the war among the eons falling into place. Even Polka Kakemon is not safe from being Nus's puppet. In fact, she is probably one of Nus's favorite. She kills members of the society who got too close to the boundary of the circle of knowledge, and that includes Robert I and Robert II that Nus themselves invited to the society to start the Emperor's Wars. She killed them following Nus's calculation. Perhaps Nus has calculated that the two Roberts could only serve their purpose for so long before they brought more harm to Nus's position in the universe. Before that threat could come true, Nus made Polka kill them. I bet even Lygus, who has been trying to kill Nus, is only alive today because Nus has allowed him to be. Yes, Lygus wants to unleash the Iron Tomb to destroy Nus, but so far, what have we got? Two geniuses working together with the Nameless to stop him, and rebelling data entities that will not surrender to their fate, among which is a data entity who has earned Nanook's gaze, its hatred so strong it managed to scratch that eon. Yes, I'm talking about Phynon and how it is abundantly clear that despite him merging with the Iron Tomb, what he seeks to destroy is the destruction itself. Nous has allowed this experiment to go on for as long, yet to bring the Lord of Silence to crash the party, because this simulation has resulted in two beneficial things to them. One is that Nanook the Destruction could in fact be hurt. And two is that a Lord Ravager that would oppose the destruction instead of the erudition might be born out of it. So when I said Nous was playing a 4D chess game, this is what I meant. When Ligus said that the geniuses were prisoners of erudition, what he really meant is that they are puppets attached to Nous the puppeteer's string of code. You can see why his goal makes sense despite his immoral way of reaching it. If you've reached this far into the video thinking that 84 are too many Eminators for an Aeon to have, remember, Polka has killed many of them. Plus, Nous has been around for a very long time. As Herda put it, invitations to join the Genius Society are only handed out to individuals as rare as the author, and there have only been 84 of such illustrious members since the birth of Nous. Since the inception of Nous, there have only been 84 of them. I don't know exactly when Nous ascended because time is funny in the Starrel universe. I mean, comment below if you figure out the math. But to put it into perspective, from the death of Robert II, who was member number 66, to Herda becoming member number 83, at least 100 Ember eras have passed. We know this because the formula that Herda solved and earned her a seat among the society was left behind by Pativia Adler 100 Ember eras earlier. Pativia got that formula in the era of Scholar Strife, a dark era following the death of Robert II. So with one Ember era averaging between 76 to 240 Trailblaze years, that is one genius invited to the Genius Society every 400 to 1400 years. Not as many as we originally thought now, are there?